My name is Peter Shakeshaft. I'm the Chief Executive of the Wills Financial Group, which incorporates Wills&Co stockbrokers. I've been involved in the city now for 18 years. I've been the Chief Executive of a holding company that's owned a stockbroker for a significant amount of years. I count myself an expert within the small cap market. I've raised money for companies from 1995 onwards. I think I understand this sector very well. I'd like to think that I'm an expert. I'd like to think that I understand the tax implications of the sector, and certainly I understand both the financial and political areas of the sector. Our firm are members of the Enterprise Investment Scheme Association, and we take an active part in all areas in this marketplace. It's very personal to me, because the small cap sector, I believe, is the area where we're going to get out of recession. It's going to create jobs, it's going to create ideas, it's going to create inventiveness. If we can get all those things right, that's going to start the long road to recovery in this country. If we don't, I think it's going to significantly negatively impact our ability to recover from this recession. But one of the most important factors is that for companies such as Wills&Co, it's becoming more and more difficult in a regulatory environment to square selling a small cap stock or a high risk stock to private investors. Well, out of the 19,000 clients that Wills&Co hold, there's a significant amount of them hold AIM and Plus stock, mostly AIM, but some Plus stock as well. The difficulty that we find ourselves with the FSA actions, which is not just about Wills&Co stockbrokers, let's make that clear, it's about a number of companies, some of which didn't have the integrity of Wills&Co stockbrokers, or in fact the infrastructure. The private investor will not any longer be able to trade in AIM and Plus. Yes, if he wants to look at the newspapers and try and find that information through, he may take a punt on a very, very small amount of stock, but this will dwindle even further than it is now. The private investor will be disadvantaged by the actions of the FSA. The market will contract. Institutions won't get involved in the AIM sector because they won't have an exit route, and therefore banks won't lend to the AIM and Plus companies because they know that institutions won't want to get involved and match their finance. And at the end of the day, if the institutions want to change their format about investing, their criteria, there's no exit route for them. So that pension fund that all of you hold, which is now in AIM stock, will dwindle even further because there's no exit route for them.
The FSA final notice mentions two significant points: 19 telephone calls, which they believe to were evidence of mis-selling, and that your complaints weren't handled correctly. Are you able to comment on those two issues?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a lot of debate over this, and let's just take them separately. Let's talk about the 19 calls in the first instance. The FSA's view is that 19 calls, if you cross-fertilise that through our whole database, would be representative of where we are. Now, evidently, 19 calls, as far as I'm sitting, that's not the case. But don't take my word for it. We took this and paid an awful lot of money for a significant consultancy firm to come into our organisation and to look at those 19 calls and to then determine whether they believed whether they were mis-sold or not. And their view, quite categorically, in a report is that there is no evidence of mis-selling. We had an independent researcher come in and ask those clients what they thought of our service. And the corresponding results were very, very encouraging to our stockbroking firm. Clearly, we have never sat on our laurels. But if you look at them in isolation, they were acceptable in our eyes. But not in the FSA's eyes. And at the end of the day, the FSA regulates this area. That's what they determined, and that's where it is. They have to ignore what this top 4 consultancy practitioner has said, ignore what we say, and ignore what the clients say. It's their decision, and that's what they've done. You know, some of those clients, there's one client that had traded 140 times with us. They picked up the 42nd trade of those 140 odd trades that client had conducted with us. And there were some risk warnings missing. I accept that. But overall, the client knew what he was buying. Overall, the client knew what the risks were. And frankly, if the FSA believe in their own mind that that was the case, then as I I've always believed that every single stockbroking firm in the city is at fault. If we're at fault, every stockbroker is at fault. And then where does that take us?
We were fined in 2007, and as a result, that generated the complaints.
Well, quite clearly, I'm not going to sit here and say that Wills&Co did not have an historical issue with its complaints. We were fined in 2007 for mis-selling, and when we researched the business that had gone on from there, we immediately went to the FSA and said, we agree, and that's why the fine was so small. Now, we've put a lot of things right since those days, and we are dealing still with those historical complaints. But we've never, ever, in the time from that date, have put a backward foot in acknowledging them and dealing with them. We have dealt with those complaints, and we believe that we were doing a good job. The reality of it is that the complaints were drawn in at a later stage when they knew that they were on, this is the FSA, when they realised that they wouldn't get the desired result that they wanted out of the 19 calls. So they brought complaints in at the last moment.
£1.5 million is the fine that the FSA would have given to Wills for the discrepancies they found. Do you think that's proportionate?
You have to look at the whole industry. Certainly fines or perceived fines are going up all the time. They could have clawed any amount out of a tree and said, we're going to supposedly fine you this. It's something you're going to have to ask the FSA about, but the comparison between us and other firms is unwarranted and, frankly, in my mind, unneeded. I think that they must have a realisation and, moreover, an understanding of this type of business. And if they haven't, and they believe that that's right, then that is evidence to me that they didn't investigate this business fully. So my final word on that, the fine reflects the amount of diligence that the FSA conducted in this business. I don't think they fully understood the business.